from the 5th to the 3rd century BC, the 18 schools. So now that your body and mind are calm enough, you'll be able to listen to the talk. Right? Huh? Now, why did this talk come about? This talk came about because somebody was telling me that this is the Dharma ending age. The Dharma ending age, what are we to do about it? But let me assure you that 2,600 years ago, in the first Dharma discourse that the Buddha gave, in the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, the Buddha says that, that the turning of the wheel of the Dharma had been started. And Kondana, Anya Kondana was the first to know. Subsequently, there were 5 others who knew the Dharma. And he declared from that time the turning of the wheel of the Dharma, that nobody, no being, no human being, no Mara will be able to stop this wheel of Dharma. So rest assured and be confident of what the Buddha says, that the Dharma has been turned and it will continue to turn. And that you just would be able to understand from today why there is this evolution of Buddhism from the time of the Buddha until now. Right? Yeah? Because everything is anicca, right? It has to change. So it will change. Now, so how did it change? So today's topic I will cover in this way. Okay, I will describe the 18 schools, what, when, how, who, and then subsequently, after the description, I will say why. Then I will throw in 3 suttas, Brahmajala Sutta, Tikka-Naka Sutta, and Mahaparinibbana Sutta. Okay, now, there were 18 schools that evolved from the time of the Gautama Savaka Sangha. That is the time when the Buddha started, the Dharma, and then the Sangha were formed. Right, and this Sangha was formed at the end of his life in the Mahaparinibbana Sutta. Ananda asked him, who will be your successor? And he said, the Dharma and the discipline will be your successor. He didn't say XYZ will be the successor and that there will be a lineage. There isn't a lineage. So we can also compare the wisdom of the Buddha, Gautama Buddha, and the subsequent organizations who will say there is secret transmission or there is a successor. So he says there is no successor. Let the Dharma and the precepts, the Vinaya, okay, for the lay will be the precepts, the Dharma and the precepts to guide the practice. So that is sufficient. Because how can he determine who along the line will be pure as he? So it will not be able to do that. So you can see why he says, no successor, let the Dharma and the precepts be the guide. So that's why he had no successor. And then we have the First Buddhist Council, where Mahakassapa, okay, and chair the First Buddhist Council, and where all the Dharma and the Vinaya were consolidated. And that is 3 months after his Mahaparinibbana. So his Dharma and the Vinaya were then consolidated and orally transmitted. So you can see in Theravada, there may be a Moggallana and a Sariputta, okay, the 2 COO, right, in the Theravada. You must have 2, no? You must have 2 deputy prime minister, okay, so you must have 2. But you can see in the Mahayana schools, they have Mahakassapa and Venerable Ananda. Mahakassapa was instrumental in ensuring that the Dharma and the Vinaya were recorded. Okay, and Ananda, he's the super bank, data bank, and he ensured that all the Dharma were recorded as he heard it, right, for 25 years. Right, so we have the Dharma and the Vinaya recorded in the first Buddhist council. Then by and by, we have 100 years pass by in a blink of an eye. And then in 100 years' time, we have the second Buddhist council. Okay? In the second Buddhist council, Yasa found that the Vajrayan monks in the east were actually accepting gold and silver. And then he also noted 9 other practices that were unorthodox. Now, gold and silver were not accepted. In the suttas, it was mentioned, even there is a lay person called Manikulata. Right? If you go and look, this Manikulata, he was the head man. And he was in the assembly together with the Rajagaha noblemen. And they were saying that the Sangha members accept gold and silver. And Manikulata then said, no, the second Sangha members do not accept gold and silver. And so he then approached the Buddha later and asked, did I say what is correct? And then the Buddha says, yes, what you say were correct. Now, if gold and silver can be accepted, then the 5 courts of sense pleasures will be able to be enjoyed. If you have gold and silver, you will enjoy the 5 courts of sense pleasure. He said courts, you know, courts, Thai. Okay, 5 courts of sense pleasures. If these 5 courts of sense pleasures, these 5 courts of sense pleasures are enjoyed by ascetics, then these are not my ascetics. So it's very clear, right, in what he says. Gold and silver were not to be accepted. And in another sutta, he mentioned that, you know, the sun and the moon's brilliance will actually marred or defiled by what? Clouds, fog, haze, smoke, the Indonesian haze, right? Yeah? And then he said Rahu, the leader of the Asuras. So he said 4 things that mar the brilliance of the sun and the moon. And then what are the 4 defilements that mar the practice of the ascetics? He says accepting gold and silver as one of them. The brilliance of the ascetic will not be seen. The other 3 will indulging in intoxicants, indulging in sexual intercourse, and engaging in wrong livelihood. So there's a whole list of wrong livelihood. But suffice to say, gold and silver were not to be accepted. So then Yasa was afraid that if the wrong practices will, practiced, then the Vinaya changed, the Dharma will be changed too. So there were also 9 other points about food. 5 of them were said that do not eat after noon, after the noon time. Do not eat from place to place, right? Yeah? Do not take buttermilk, do not take fermented drinks, and then do not keep salt in horn and bring from place to place. So there were 5 out of the 10 which were about food. So it's not surprising, right? Singaporeans makan sutra. Okay, yeah? So this is food. So this food is something very dear, but it is a practice. And it's something that it is for nourishment. So they have only 4 requisites, and food were one of them. So to be indulging in them can be a problem. So then subsequently there were others that says that many observances or the patimokkha can, or the sangha karma can be held in different places in the sima. So it's like having many AGMs all over the place. So that cannot do too. Because sangha karma or actions to be discussed and undertaken had to be congregated together. Okay. And then some of them would say that if we can just listen to traditions, my senior did it, so I also do that. He also considered that no. And then the size of the sitting mat, they must have a border. If you do not have a border, you can extend the border. If you extend the border, it becomes from a sitting mat, become a sleeping mat. Right, huh? And then, of course, you can see that there's these 10 practices that the Vajra monks were doing, that you had to actually have another council. So the first council was 500. The second council was 700. Right, huh? To talk about Vinaya rules. Note, Vinaya rules. Nothing about female. People say it's Dharma ending age. Could it be the female, the introduction of female into the Sangha? Note, history tells us that the Second Buddhist Council, which bring about the split in the Sangha, was about Vinaya rules. Okay, so at the Second Buddhist Council, the Vinaya, all these 10 points that were being practiced were said to be offenses. Right, yeah? And so the 10 Vinaya rules were then affirmed that he has to not to accept gold and silver, not to eat afternoon, cannot eat from place to place, cannot take buttermilk, cannot take the fermented drinks, right, yeah? And have a border, and you have to have a congregation that is together and cannot be just tradition. So here then this suttas and the Vinaya were then chanted again in the Second Buddhist Council. Now the First Buddhist Council took 7 months. The first, the second 8 months. Can you imagine? So it's 8 months. Now 100 years, that's 100 years, and you can see people change. Now 700. We have the constitution of the Sangha. The constitution of the Sangha is that if there is a vivada, that means there's a dispute of the Dharma or the Vinaya, they come together, right? And if 9 members, only 9 members are sufficient, if they all have a different view, they can actually leave the original Sangha and have their own school. Because the constitution of the Sangha is democratic. Each monk has 1 vote. Right? And they don't depend on the senior. If my senior monk vote this, I must vote that. It doesn't. There's no authority in that sense. It's a teaching, it's a practice of free thinking. So here we have the constitution of the Sangha that is democratic, but is communistic in the aims and the requirements, but it is democratic. And because it's democratic, then you are allowed to have your own views. And if your own views, you have 9 people, you can form your own school. Okay. Now, only 700 in the Second Buddhist Council. In the Mahasangika, 10,000. So it's 10,000 to 700. So they say that there is 10,000. Okay? 10,000. They say they do not want to be binded with the monkish practice. So you have Mahasanghika. So all those 10 points about the Vinaya practice then were allowed in the Mahasanghika school. So you can understand how we have different practices in Vinaya now. Okay, and this Mahasanghika is not Mahayana, okay? Mahasanghika means a big group of people. So the second Buddhist council, there were 700 Aryas. The Mahasanghika, 10,000. Right, 10,000, So we all have the BRICS exit, right? Right, all democratic, right, And so you will have an outcome. You have an outcome, and the outcome is more to see, right, It's all uncertain. And then we will have the most powerful nation going to vote in November. And we are also uncertain of the outcome. Is it Trump or Clinton? The outcome is uncertain. Even Obama says it's uncertain. And so they would actually have all their ammunition out. So it is a democratic vote that will determine the outcome. So similarly, the democratic vote determine the split. So you have a big group, Mahasanghika. So the Mahasanghika now have a change in their Vinaya. They also then introduce a change in the Dhamma. Because now they are not going to support some basic, and that some basic doctrine is the Arahant status. Okay, you are 700 Arahants, right? Sure or not? You say you're 700 Aryas, right? Sure or not? So then there was a very charismatic monk. So charismatic means you can sweep anybody along. Black can become white, okay? Right, So you can see that this very, very charismatic monk called Mahadeva, listen to the name, Mahadeva. Sounds like Trump also, Trump, triumphant, right, So Mahadeva, the name of that monk, he says that the Arahants, he gives 5 points, that the Arahants can be ignorant, can be tempted, can have doubts, and that, Arahants just simply become Arahants by saying, Aho, Aho. Aho, Aho means dukkha, dukkha. Right, And Arahants, it's very hard to become Arahants without a teacher. So there were these 5 points that he pushed across. So then this doctrine changed, that the Arahants no longer be the goal, right? And now they have the goal of Bodhisattva. So the Bodhisattva goal is then replace the Arahant goal. The Bodhisattva is a being that will save all other sentient beings before they become the Buddha. Right, And this Bodhisattva can go to the lower realms to be animals and then teach Dhamma. Okay, so this is the Bodhisattva view. So you can see that this view had been introduced then, 100 years after the Buddha's, more than slightly 100 years after the Buddha's Mahaparinibbana. The Buddha himself was a Bodhisattva, a being in search of the Bodhi. Right, So anybody in search for the truth is called Bodhisattva. Right, The Sattva is more Sanskrit. Right, And the meaning is that you want to save all sentient beings first, before you become enlightened. Now this was their goal. Now then we will ask you, we all chanted that the Buddha was the most incomparable. Okay, he is the highest, the most supreme. If he could not change Devadatta, then was he a Buddha? Because this goal is to say that I will not become a Buddha if I did not save all other sentient beings. So, you see, there will be people who will not be able to be saved. And there will be different soils, different fertile soil. The Buddha will plant seeds in the fertile soil. And he says the Sangha is the fertile soil, because they have the motivation to realize. And this motivation, he will cultivate and encourage, and then help them realize. Right? Yeah? So, you see, these seeds, how can the Bodhisattva view, you can create many views, and it can still be the wrong view. There are many religious views now that is very clearly a wrong view, right? Yeah? But you can see this view also, that this Bodhisattva view is something that they cling on to replace the Arahant view. And in order to do that, they also talk about the omniscience of the Buddha. They say that the omniscience of the Buddha was from the time of his pregnancy in his mother's womb. So then, in his mother's womb, he can preach to the devas. Preach what? Right. So he says he can preach to the devas. Preach what? You know, in the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, it was said that with the 5 ascetics, he had been with them for 6 years. And in that 6 years, he never said he had realized. He did not preach to them. But after he had realized, then he told these 5 friends that he had realized. So the Buddha did not preach to any being before then. He became omniscient at the time of enlightenment and not before that. So this omniscience of the Buddha painted the Buddha. So the omniscience, the spin was, he was preaching when he was in his mother's womb. When he was delivered, he was able to walk 7 steps, right, and declare, right. So all this are creative ideas, right? And that Yasodhara wasn't touched. Rahula was a virgin birth, right? And that the Buddha's body can be live for long, and his actions are actually supramundane, and he had to take medicine. It's just to have a show. Right, and he can actually speak the Dharma in 1 word, and that it will be understood. And his life will be long. So you can see that we have no statues that were built very, very tall. This is actually to reflect the omniscience of the Buddha. So you can see the change now. You can see how this was introduced, the Bodhisattva idea and the omniscience of the Buddha. Okay, so you are clear about this? So you have the Mahasankika. Now we say, if we have so many people in this room, there will be so many views, right? And that if you have a school, all you need to enhance that school is by your language. You keep on using a language at a place, and then you keep having the suttas and the Vinaya being chanted at the Uposatha days, And the Uposatha days is not only new moon, full moon. They have the 8, the 14, right, the 15, and the new moon. So there are about 4 days in the month where there are Vinaya and the Dharma. Vinaya, the Patimokkha, were chanted. So this reinforced their belief. Now, this reinforcement, we all learn our timetable. We all have to learn 5 times, then we remember. Now, if you learn a few more times, more than 5 times, you believe that this is true. So, by and by, if they encourage and they practice this Vinaya, which they keep chanting, then it becomes true, okay, for them. Okay, that's their reality. Okay, then now we're going to talk about all these 18 other schools, all these schools. So from Mahasanghika, it grew to, once you have a split in the idea, Gokulika was just Abhidhamma. They focused on Abhidhamma. And then Evakarika was just that all in one and one in all. Then you have Panati, Bahulika, Chaitya. Okay, so you can see Mahasanghika got 6. Okay, then we come to the Theravadan. The Theravadan from 1 is going to 12. See, it's double. Right, yeah? So the views is actually, there are more views here. So Theravada, they have the Vajraputtika, and then Mahisasika. Mahisasika's teacher was Purana. Purana were one of those, although it's like dead and gone at that time, but they uphold that Purana, the way he says that at the first Buddhist council, the first Buddhist council was with 500 Arahants. Then subsequently, Purana came back from somewhere, and then he said, I'm not going to subject myself to the collection of Dhamma, the sutras, and the Vinaya. I only believe in what I heard from the Buddha. So they have this founder, that is Purana. And then you see Vajraputtika split, and then Samitya. And then Mahisasika split, and you have Sarvastivadin, Dhammakutika. Sarvastivada, then have this further. And then you have 12. 6 plus 12 equals 18 schools. Okay, so there's from the 5th to the 3rd century BC, you have 18 schools, right? So I will highlight Samitya and Sarvastivadin because after the Chinese pilgrims came, you only find these 4 surviving. The other schools have sort of retreated or become very minor. Okay, now what is the Vajraputtika split from Theravadan? It's because of the idea of Patgala. Patgala is an entity that they believe there is an entity, and this entity will end in Nibbana. So, Patgala. So you can call a rose by any other name, but you can call the soul a Patgala. Okay? And because this Patgala is a permanent entity that they believe in and will end in Nibbana. So you say it's the constituted and the unconstituted. Okay. This is also the view that is held by the Samitya. So the Vajraputtika share the same view with the Samitya school, and that is the Patgala school. Now, you all heard about Sarvastivadin, right? Sarvastivadin have also a view. The different view from Mahisasika is that there is a Sava. Sava. A Sava is another word also for a permanent entity. Sava. This Sava, he says, is the 5 Dhammas that exist in the past, present, and the future. And this is also an entity. So you see that you can call Atman or soul by many names, but this Patgala is also an entity. So you can see it's split here, an entity, and then Sava, an entity here. So you see that having the view of that this body that you see in front of you, or the body that you are having, it's a self, right? The body is the self is the body. The self is in the body, right? The body in the self. So this is a repeated word that the Buddha used. But to lose this view, that this conventional view, when you lose this conventional view, then the Buddha said, this is non-substantial, there is anatta. So here, it is very difficult to lose this view. So you have more administrators than realizers, right? You have you have more people who rule, will be more administrators than the ones who realized. So there will be administrators of Sangha organization, but there may be not many realized beings there. So when there are not many realized beings, then they would actually have to teach the Dhamma. When they teach the Dhamma, if you say anatta, then it may be that I will introduce another idea, a Patgala, which may be more accepting, or a Sava that is more accepting. Because this idea of a self is an idea or a factor that is lost in the stream Entra, the first stage of sainthood. So in the Buddha's Gautama Vaka Sangha, most of them have lost this view of the self. Then subsequently, you see how it grew and expanded. It is it may be very hard to run an organization. When you run an organization, then this view that you still have, and that you have to propagate the Dhamma, then you may need to change the Dhamma because of the understanding. So here then we have Patgala, and then we have Sava being introduced. So the Buddha has said that the three characteristics of existence, what arises will cease. That's a characteristic of existence. The breath that you have breathed in, breathed out, has changed. The feelings you have in the morning, based on your contacts, have changed. Right? Your mind has changed. Right? So you can see that the 5 aggregates have changed. Dependent arising. So nothing stays. When nothing stays, then there is no substance in it. Do you build a house on shifting sands? Do you have value in that house on shifting sands? The world is changing so much. Ideologies change so much. So everything is changing. We don't know the outcome, but it seems to be a dangerous place. So samsara is dangerous because you cannot determine, because it's so impermanent. So the 3 characteristics are anicca, dukkha, and anatta. So it will be that the 5 aggregates, the body, the feelings, the perceptions, the mental formations, and the consciousness will change depending on conditions. In the past, the present, or the future, gross or subtle, internal or external, it will change. If it doesn't change, means you're clinging on to something. And then you have to let go of that clinging. The actual nature is that it will change. That when something changes, there is no substance in it. So if there is no substance in it, then there is no holding to anything. So here it is difficult to comprehend or understand the Dharma. And because of that, you can see when administrators run and that it is not enlightened, then they will introduce new ideas. They can call it any other name, but it is still that sense of permanent entity. So that permanent entity will be Patgala and that Sava. Okay, so then we began, it's all right, this one? So you understand that there is this, two words that they have to describe permanent entity. Okay. Then we have other schools that will also tell you Chaitya and Dhamma-Guptika, both from different Mahasankhika development and that Theravadan split. So Dhamma-Guptika and Chaitya, Chaitya as the name says, means the stupa. So in this school, they believe that it's meritorious to go around the stupas. So their practice is to go around the stupas and get merits from them. This Chaitya, so stupa sort of praying, is similar to Dhamma-Guptika also. Right, yeah. Now, I forgot to say about Samkantika and the Sutta. They also have the idea of a permanent entity, and they are called skanda, like kanda, no, aggregate side, but it's kanda. So they believe also in the entity. Okay? So you roughly understand the 18 schools. Just have differences in views, and then the school will leave. The 9 members or more will leave to form a school, and then they go elsewhere, and then they grow, and with emphasis on their Vinaya and their Dhamma. Okay, so this is how it developed. In the Third Buddhist Council, Moggaliputta Tissa do not want to hold Patimokkha with the 17 other member schools in Asokarama, because it says how to talk about Patimokkha when all the Vinaya practices were different. Right, huh? So then he left Asokarama, and for 7 years there weren't any Upassata. And then when King Ashoka, he didn't micromanage. So then when 7 years later he found out, no Upassata. Oh, must tell the monks to have Upassata. And then the ministers then, by show of force, say, you must have Upassata. And when they refuse, the ministers execute the monks. Right, huh? And then, King Ashoka has been remorseful of the Kalinga war, and have done everything to reduce killing. In his own household, he has diminished the numbers, reduced the numbers of animals killed. He has forest preservations, wildlife preserve, and that he have hospitals built for humans and animals, and he have gardens that were for planting of the herbs. So you can see he was promoting life, health. To have killed the monks, he was very, very troubled. Now he says, who were responsible for this killing? You all said that CEO responsible, right? That everything are CEO, right? So who was the ruler? King Ashoka, right? Huh? So it is always the king or the president or whoever, right? Huh? So he was very troubled, and nobody could put his troubles at rest. And then they mentioned that Moggaliputta Tissa. Moggaliputta Tissa was away, in Aho Ganga for 7 years. He refused to be, involved in the meddling of and with all these, worldly things. He refused. But at the third request, so you must always ask 3 times. At the third request, he then said that for the sake of Sasana, he came down. And for 7 days and 7 nights, apparently, Venerable Moggalliputta Tissa, he taught the Dharma to King Ashoka. 7 days and 7 nights. So King Ashoka was actually very intelligent. So he understood. And then after that, he reviewed all the Sangha members. And that those who said of eternal view or nihilist view, he would actually ask them to go away and that wear white. Okay? And that for those who say that Buddhism is a philosophy of discernment, discerning what is right, what is wrong, and that knowing, then this is the practice. So then, at the end of this, after this, they had the third Buddhist council, and then we had the Kathavatu. The Kathavatu is the Abhidhamma, the 5th book of the Abhidhamma, and there it is about the 500 points of controversy. So out of all these 17 other schools, there were 500 unorthodox views. 500 unorthodox views. And then in the replacement of these 500 unorthodox views, we have 500 orthodox views of the Theravada. And then with that, the King Ashoka then sent out 9 missions, of which 1 mission was to Sri Lanka, where it was like led by Venerable Mahinda, and later on Sangha Mita Teri joined the brother to form the Bhikkhu Bhikkhuni order in Sri Lanka. So this is the Theravada school, right? Yeah? And that that's how all this literature, all the suttas, it was then consolidated as the Theravada. Okay, so this will be 18 schools. Any question? Before I go on to these 3 other suttas. Okay, no question, then this would be off. So, now Brahmajala Sutta, Dika Nikaya number 1, talking about a net of views. In this particular sutta, there were 62 worldviews of the Indian practitioners at the time of the Buddha. Right here. So now, in this time, there were many, many religious views. Right here. And the Buddha in this sutta, Brahmajala Sutta, talk about the net of views which were wrong. But it says views. Now, views is something that is an idea that you cling on to, right? So in the dependent origination or conditionality, you have contact with a view. And then with contact with a view, you have a feeling. And if the feeling is pleasant, there will be craving. And then a clinging. And then a becoming. And then a birth of a whole lot of suffering. So the Buddha says that it is because of this constant contact. With 62 views, if you constantly contact, and if that view gives you a pleasant feeling, and you cling on to it, then there will be a birth of a whole lot of suffering. So he says, do not cling to sense objects, and do not cling to views. So when people get radicalized, you notice that they become addicted. When you become addicted, you need to be rehabilitated. You know, so this is like you cannot remove you can see that you have to actually let go and replace it with another view, or let go and have no views. So he says, Matala Souter talk about the 62 views of eternalist, annihilist, and even Nibbana. And some people believe that when you go into the arupa jhanas, where you don't feel the body, that is, I lost myself. And when you lose yourself, then I realized. But then the Buddha said, this is also a view. So arupa jhanas, like you have to be there. If you die and you have inclination to be there, you'll be there for a long, long time. Because it's still a jhanic state. And a jhanic state is still volitional. Okay, So Matala Souter, that's the main point. It's a very long sutta, but the essence of the sutta is that why people cling to their views. Because they give contact, and you contact your internet many, many times, and then you believe it's true. And you pray 5 times, then you think it's true. And then you practice moment to moment, then you will think it's true. So it is actually a contact. But the Buddha would say that chanda, or looking for the truth, is a wholesome desire. Right. Then we talk about the second sutta, Kanaka Sutta, which is Majjhima Nikaya number 74. Kanaka was a wanderer. He was the nephew of Sariputta, right? And that he went to visit the Buddha and said that after the pleasantries, he says that, I do not accept any views. The Buddha then said, isn't that a view? That you do not accept any views? So then he says, oh, right. But he hasn't relinquished that view. So then the Buddha says, right, there are people who don't accept any views. And then there are people who accept views. There are 3 kinds of people. So there are people who accept views. He says those who say everything is acceptable to me. Then when he says everything is acceptable to me, then he says that person is close to lust. Everything is acceptable, everything is delightful. So then this person will be close to bondage, right? And so he will be far away from the truth. Then he says, nothing is acceptable to me. That view is closer to non-bondage, non-lust. Then Kanaka said, oh, the Buddha praised me. Okay, then after that, the 3 views. So somebody will say something is acceptable to me and something is not acceptable to me. So there are 3 views. Everything is acceptable, nothing is acceptable, something is acceptable and something not acceptable. Then there's this person who has such a view. Then he'll say that if I hold on to a view, then I will be like, I can foresee I will quarrel with those of the other 2 views. And then it will be a lot of vexation for me if I have views. Then he say, oh, I must give up my view. So he gave up his view. So the other 2 also similarly said that they will give up their views. So giving up the views is also no clinging. Right. Then this is Kanaka, and the Buddha talked to Kanaka about his view. So there were 62 views. Then we have Kanaka coming down to a view that he has. And the Buddha says, let go of that view. He says then the body is impermanent, conditionally dependent, and that he asked Kanaka to see the body as impermanent. And he said that it is a tumor, it's a boy, it's a dart, it's a foreign body. And then he says, let it go. So then the body, he talked. Then he talked about feelings. He says there are three kinds of feelings: pleasant feeling, unpleasant feeling, and neutral, neither pleasant nor unpleasant. And you can only have one kind of feeling at any one time. And this feeling is dependent arising from the contact. And this, when it arises, is subjected to destruction. Everything that is conditioned to arise is subjected to destruction, to fading away, to ceasing. So then, no need to hang on to any of the feeling, because feeling is also dependent, arising, and is impermanent. So Sariputta was fanning the Buddha, and the Buddha was talking to his nephew. And then he said, Sariputta said, "Oh, the Buddha has abandoned. He knows according to what he says." And at that time, Sariputta realized. So he realized on the comprehension of feelings, and there was no more clinging. So this is the sutta that says where Sariputta released all clinging of all things. This is Kanaka Sutta. And Kanaka, after he heard what the Buddha said, also realized the Dhamma. So this is about views, that views also have to be let go of. He says that do not quarrel over views, because it is a clinging to a view. That you have to, if you quarrel, he will say that I don't quarrel with people over views, because I have let go of views. It's just a view, and that you cling on to the view. Okay, so from many views, we come to one view, and it is asked to let go of that view. And once that view is released, relinquished, then the person's mind is liberated. Then he says, similarly, in the case of Sariputta, will say that there is no more becoming. Then in Parinibbana Sutta, there was the last disciple of the Buddha who ordained under him. His name was Subaida. And Subaida was a wanderer, and he heard about the Buddha. And then he asked Venerable Ananda, "Can I speak to the Buddha?" And then the Ananda, the COO, right, PA, right? "Oh, he's very weary, don't disturb the Buddha." And then the Buddha heard all this commotion outside, and the Buddha says, "Let him in, he would be able to understand what I'm going to speak on." And Subaida then asked, there are so many teachers, the 6 teachers. You have the 6 teachers, Ajita, Kesa, Kambali, Makali, Kosala, the Jain, Nikanda, Nikaputta, etc., etc. Are they all realized? They all purported that they all realized. I'm so confused. Who has realized and who has not? And then what to do? The Buddha says, don't bother about whether people realize or not. Right, yeah? And then he said, let me tell you the Dhamma. He says that wherever there is the Eightfold Noble Path, as long as there is the Eightfold Noble Path, there will be realized beings. He says the Eightfold Noble Path. As long as there is this Eightfold Noble Path, he said there will be realized beings. So you have heard of many, many schools, 18 schools and more to come. Right? Huh? After that, you have the Chinese, you know, the Amitabha school, we have the Tian Tai school, we have many, many schools. It's all just because of conditions and leaders who then teach the Dharma. He says that if there is Eightfold Noble Path, then there will be realized beings. Now, despite of all the different differences in their schools, the Eightfold Noble Path, the Four Noble Truths is still emphasized. So what is the Eightfold Noble Path that was emphasized? So you have the right understanding, right view, and the right view is of the Four Noble Truths. And the Four Noble Truths is suffering, the origin, the cessation, and the way. And the understanding and the right understanding, that if you understand this, then you will let go. You'll be kind to yourself. You won't be cruel. So the right view, there is suffering. You have to let go. Be kind to yourself. Don't hold on to the suffering. And that you practice it, you practice the way, it will cease. For this suffering, there is an origin. So there's a right understanding, then you come right speech. Because you won't want to suffer, so you won't to lie, you don't want to be harsh, you don't want to be idle, you won't be gossiping, you won't be backbiting, etc. So then there will be right speech and action and livelihood and the effort to break all your bad habits and encourage good habits and the mindfulness and the concentration. And so then all this lead to the knowledge of things as they are, of the characteristics of existence, and the knowledge and vision. You have to see it for yourself. So in this Sila, Samadhi, and Panya, there is the knowledge and vision of the liberation. So there is the Eightfold Noble Path. So you see, if there is the Eightfold Noble Path in any schools, then there will be a Arya. So we don't want to talk about differences because we want to talk about commonalities. If you say that this school is like that, so we say Bodhisattva view, etc., etc. The relinquish of view comes naturally, right? Yeah? Relinquishing of views come with an understanding. And then when we have different schools, it has different functions. And different functions serve the being, the maturity of the being in different ways. So the Bodhisattva idea has a symbol of compassion. Just like we offer different items as symbols, so the Bodhisattva also are symbols. Guan Yin, symbols of compassion. It's actually symbols of the Brahma Viharas. So then we embrace our fellow practitioners. So we don't want to quarrel over views. Because in the different schools, they are very pure beings. Right? Huh? We have the Zen master, Hui Neng. Then you have different masters who have used different vehicles to reach a destination. When you use different vehicles, after that, when you get down, you don't bring your vehicle along. So all these are rafts that bring one across. So you can reach Changi Airport in any way. You can go by bus, MRT, whatever. or your Mercedes Benz or whatever. But after that, you have to let it go to get onto your plane. So you see, you have to, all these are just vehicles. Vehicles to reach a destination. But you don't hold on to your vehicle. Who hold on to the MRT? Nobody, right? Okay, so you see, so this is to say, in all, to summarize, that the Dharma and the Sasana is here, and that don't fret, as long as you practice the Eightfold Noble Path, and you emphasize the suffering, that this suffering and letting it go, because holding on to views can be suffering too. Okay, you have 7 minutes more for questions.
I think Dr. Ng has very beautifully summarized today's talk, which is rather intense and comprehensive. Shall we open the floor for Q&A? Yes.
Thank you, Dr. Ng, for the enlightening talk. I would like to ask, I note that the Mahayana canon is much more expensive as compared to the Theravadan, the Pali canon. And I'm wondering, because they actually put it, they have actually a lot of additional suttas, and they actually make a reference to a lot of the contemporary Buddhas versus the historical Buddhas, which is in the Pali canon, which I understand, like the Amitabha Buddha as well as the Medicine Buddha. And I feel, and I understand that in the Mahayana canon, they actually focus, in the Mahayana tradition, they focus a lot on expedience, some things to help you to expedite development of concentration or loving kindness. For example, through mantra recitation or Buddha name recitation versus the Theravadan, which focuses more on the watching of the breath. And so I see that although there are differences, which I note your talk today, which says that we should focus on the similarities, but because our conditions are different and our abilities are different, so choosing a particular technique is crucial to achieving enlightenment as soon as possible for the individual person. For example, customized teaching is very important. For example, if you have, for medicine as well, like you need to, if you can customize the particular medicine for the particular person, that will be optimal. So in this context, in the Buddhist tradition as well as applying it to our own practice, because everyone is so different, is it better that we choose something that is applicable to oneself based on our own capabilities and not something that is just based on the understanding of whether this is the truth or not the truth. Like you say, we should let go of these differences in views and trying to ascertain whether the view is correct just based on the authenticity of the text may not be the appropriate method. And I just want to seek your views on this this point. Thank you.
So we understand. May I understand that view of yours, and that view of yours would be that
I personally think that from my own practice, I have difficulty in doing breath meditation. So I actually attempted doing Pure Land Amitabha Buddha's recitation of Buddha's name, and I find it very effective for myself because I can do it even with my eyes open, and I can do it at all times, even when I'm bored or when I'm not doing anything, so that my mind is I can actually develop concentration even faster than trying to do breath meditation. Because breath meditation for me is very the breath is very elusive, especially when you're very calm. You tend to have difficulty focusing the mind, and for myself, this is something that I've discovered over time. I've experimented, and I felt that Buddha name recitation is much more advantageous to me. And because I did go for some classes by Shen before on the Pure Land method, and I think one of the things that the Mahayanans believe, if you believe in the Amitabha Sutta, is that you're actually depending on Amitabha's 48 great vows to actually bring you to the non-regression state of the Pure Land, where you can actually achieve enlightenment, or not really enlightenment, but you will never come back again to the samsaric world, the saha world. In one lifetime, you can actually go to a pure land where you will never ever come back to the samsara. Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why I think it's so advantageous. On the other hand, I think I've gained more peace and concentration through this particular practice. But I think everyone is different, so I just want to seek your views on this. Because in the previous lecture, actually, I did ask for the speaker's views on this. And she pointed out that it was not actually in the Pali canon. So I just wanted to understand from your point of view whether this is a good practice, and also your views on whether or not there's a need to actually follow very closely to the Pali canon in practicing the Buddhist traditions and yeah.
Okay, so that will be your raft. So that raft of yours, you find it easier to go, then you take that raft. So everybody has their different rafts. So you say yourself, because like the Dharma is experienced individual for himself, so it is as long as you have bodily and mental calm, then you will see the Dharma clearly. So even once you need to have the bodily and mental calm, the tranquility, then the insight comes. Now, the different methods of like getting yourself calm, there are more and more different types. And that to actually look at breath is the kind that the Buddha taught, because that is an easy way to calm the body and the mind. And as long as one focuses on an object, when you focus on an object like a name, so you can focus on calm, you can focus on Amitabha, or you can focus on Kuan Yin, or you can focus on the Allah, or you can focus on Mother Mary. So all this focusing on the object, and if that object gives you association with purity, then this gives you an idea that this is a good practice. So when you associate calm itself, or you associate Buddho, in-breath, out-breath, Buddho, or with in-breath, out-breath, Amitabha, or Photo, or whatever, this actually is the mind saying a word, and this mind saying a word has energy. So it is not just it has a calming energy. You add some energy to it. So when you add energy to it, it just fulfills the faculty of energy. So you fulfill the faculty of energy, it calms you down. So some people will, these are just aids to the calming. So if you say calm your breath, so your mind then directs and calms the breath, or the body. So you can use the word Buddho or Amitabha, and it calms. So when it calms the body, because it is like it's calmed down, then your body get tranquil, the mind get tranquil, because when this is the function of attention to an object. If you keep focusing on an object that is neutral, or an object that gives you hope or peace, or belief or confidence in the object, then the body and the mind gets calmed down. So it is a means. It's a means to an end. So we have different means nowadays. I'm a board and pen person. that is my means. Don't let me do tuk, 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 tuk. That's a very difficult means. That's the time of the Buddha. Their mind is more subtle. Anapanasati is more subtle. As we become very involved with things and the world we move in, the condition change. We are more distracted. We have this liking for certain technology, certain means. So when we like it, we will do it again and again. And when you do it again and again, it gives you a feeling of confidence and pleasure. When it gives you a confidence and pleasure, the 5 faculties are fulfilled. Mindfulness, concentration, confidence, effort. Then the wisdom will come. The wisdom will come with knowing, and that you actually associate it with the suffering you have, your defilements. So you have to look at, so this is like, I know how to switch to keep my mind calm, my body calm. But I have to look at the origin of suffering. What is triggering you? What is causing you to have that stress that you must resort to this? You have to attend to that stress also, because then you'll see the origin. Because he asked you, you get that, calm and peace, but you have to attend to the 4 Noble Truths, the origin of your suffering. And then either you know why you suffer, whether you let go, or you use another means to just like stop it. Stop it, man, you know. So you must be able to realize technically. So all these are vehicles. Technically, you can distract or focus on something else. But you have to like remove those. You have to look at the origin. And then in the 2nd Noble Truth, they say abandon. There is the origin of the suffering. And then this origin has to be abandoned. You have to abandon it. And then had been abandoned. Otherwise, it will be just a mat covering the dirt, just a mat covering the dirt. The defilements are not removed. You just feel shook. But you must address the defilements. The defilements of wanting, the movement, you know. What caused you to be suffering? You have to go to attend to that. So all these are vehicles. Different people have different preferences, and they use the vehicle, you know, they experience with different vehicle. And then if they find this vehicle as like easy, then they use it. After a while, you upgrade your vehicle. So it's not like you cling on to this vehicle. Your mind must be open. You open to, so it's a very pure thing, but then you can see how it origin. And then this dependent on the 48 vows of another being, there is a dependency. There's also the dependency is the same thing of dependency of a God. There's this dependency of that, there's this dependency, a dependence on this. The Buddha, you see, Kanaka, at the end of that sutta, if you go and read at it, he says he's now independent of anyone in the teacher's dispensation. Once he sees, he doesn't need to be dependent anymore. You don't have to be searching anymore. You are, oh, it's like that. So these are just expedient means. So is to draw different people with different needs. You know, it's just different, but it's still under the umbrella of Buddhism. So it is like how to see the Four Noble Truths. So he says the Four Noble Truths have to be seen in its 12 modes. And then when your mind is very calm, then you will know that even to use the word Amitabha is a volition. To use Amitabha, the word, to want to use Amitabha is a volition. He says any volition is craving. Intention is craving. So he says, give up that volition. So that volition to be given up. So it's actually giving up. But it's a means only. It doesn't mean that the nature of anicca, you will be in this vehicle, or you just use whichever that is helpful for you. Okay, I think I exceeded the time.
Thank you very much, brother, for your sharing. I think it's a very pertinent question. Can I take a pause at this moment and explain, if you have been seeing the flashes and all that, I was also just informed that this is part of some publicity efforts to capture beautiful photos and all. So I do apologize if it has caused you any disturbance, and sorry, Dr. Ng, as well.
Okay.
We didn't have the chance to inform you earlier. I wasn't aware of it also. Yeah, so I apologize for it. Perhaps, can we take one more question?
Sure, sure.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you, Dr. Ng. The question is regarding the right view, samadhi. When there's so many views by the 18 schools, but one guiding view is the right view. As there's one sutta, Majjhima Nikaya number 9, Sariputta has expounded on right view. So do I get it right that the right view is part of the vehicle rather than a view?
All right. So you see, the right view is actually the driver of the vehicle. Without the right view, then you don't get to Changi Airport. So you must have the right view. So the right view is, you see how first is the right view. And in the dependent conditionality, ignorance is the first portion. So right view is to overcome and replace ignorance. So right view is the driver of that vehicle. That you have to remind yourself that you are driving this vehicle, because with the right view, then you do the other things. You will have the chaitana, the mental volition, the consciousness, the mind body. So the whole sort of directions, then you can end that suffering.
Okay. Any final last question?
You can still ask me after. I don't know whether anybody's stomach is growling. You can ask me after the session.
Okay. Maybe one last question from brother at the back.
Hi, sister. Can you elaborate on how the Vajrayana school came about? With all the, it's even more human, in my opinion. It's more human additions to the Vinaya or to their practices.
Okay. So this is the foundation. This foundation is to help you look at any other school. So you have to read the Vajrayana, and that how it started. So it's a tantric practice, and then the Bon religion was the original. So how it develops into the different schools have a lot of tantric, esoteric Buddhism involved. So it is just like different levels of reaching out to different people. So you have to like reach out to them when they actually have a born religion practice in their home at that time. And then slowly it develops those ways.
Or maybe I was wondering, from the 18 schools, did it develop from the 18 schools or units of the 18 schools, or it came out from
Tantric.
Which is not part
Buddhism.
of the 18 schools?
No, it's not.
So from the other yogis and
it's later on, I think in the...
India, is it? It's like...
Yeah, in the northern part of India and at a different time. Right. I think the history, you can Google. You can Google and you'll be able to see the development. It's just that you want the details, you have to read yourself, right? But it's just to say that it developed based on conditions, right? Huh? And then there are certain practices there that have to be questioned. So you always question the practice against what the Buddha has taught. And then is this what the Buddha taught? And then you also must have the original teachings. So you have like divine consort. Then you would say, where's such divine consort? So then you have like, you know, people have divine consort in the Vajrayana, and that sexual intercourse is a sort of like a practice of the mundane world. Then they can say that sexual intercourse is a way to Nibbana. But then the Buddha is very clear. In the Vinaya, in the first Parajika, that if there sexual intercourse with any being is disrobing, is defeated. Because in the sexual intercourse, all the 5 courts of sense pleasures are fulfilled. So he says, these 5 courts of sense pleasures are to be relinquished. So in the Buddhist Theravadan tradition, the Parajika, that means the monk is defeated if he has sexual intercourse, not only with a woman, with an orang-utan, anything that is in that direction, then he say is far from the practice. So when you hear that there are certain schools that have married monks or non-celibate monks, or they talk about divine consort, you know that it is far away from the Buddha's teachings. And that we have said before, the defilements, we have said about the 4 defilements, of which sexual intercourse is one of them. So celibacy is considered a must for the practitioners, and even for the lay people, the 8 precepts, they asked the lay person not to have sexual intercourse when they are practicing the 8 precepts. So you have to reflect how it has changed. There is also certain schools, now we have the Buddhist cafe in Japan, and they serve intoxicants. So then you know that this is not the Buddhist practice or what the Buddha taught. Okay, so they have changed. They have changed, and that it evolved. The nature of the conditioned things is that conditioned things evolve. Then it's the discerning person who will know for himself, this is right, this is wrong. And then you won't be like, oh, any school you tell me, or anybody who preach anything, you tell me, I will know that as long as you kill, or you encourage others to kill, or you encourage violence to another, even in the protection in the name of Buddhism, the Buddha say is no, no. So if there is, it's very clear when you actually have any issues, you go back to the Dharma and the Vinaya. Then you know what is the proper practice. Then you won't be like, oh, is this, this teacher is very high level, high sounding, very commands a big practice. then you also have to reflect on the Kalama Sutta. You cannot base on tradition or scriptures or because the teacher says so. So you always have to compare it to the teachings of the Buddha, the fundamental teachings, the basic foundational teachings of the Buddha, the Four Noble Truths, the Eightfold Noble Path, the three characteristics of existence. And that he says, do not cling to anything, to any of the five aggregates. And then that you have to like uncling even from views. But then he says there's only one view you need to have. He said one attachment you need to have. And the attachment is to see arising and passing away. That's all. Arising and passing away. This is the only fortunate attachment you should have. And then the right understanding will lead you to do all the right things on the path.
Thank you.
Right.
I think it takes a lot of wisdom and effort on our part to realize what is Dharma and what is A-Dharma. So I really thank you, Dr. Ng, as well as a lot of other teachers who have come to BF and taught us and mentored us. So sincerely, can we put our palms together and say sadhu 3 times for your meritorious
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Please allow me to run through some end of service announcements.